Baby, just let me play now, not with games of the court, nor with the polished smiles I wear like diamonds when the world is watching, but with the fragile truth I hide beneath the silk of duty. Tonight, I remove my crown and set it gently beside the window where moonlight spills like confession across the marble floor. Here, in this quiet kingdom of my heart, I am not heir, not symbol, not promise. I am only a woman aching for the sound of your name as it trembles on my lips. Do you know how carefully I have learned to breathe around your absence? Each morning, I wake to a palace that applauds my discipline, my posture, my perfection. They do not see the way my pulse betrays me whenever a shadow resembles your shape, whenever footsteps echo like they might be yours. Baby, just let me play now. Let me pretend the corridors are not guarded. Let me pretend the walls are not listening. Let me pretend that love is not a rebellion. Because when I close my eyes, I rewrite destiny. In that softer world, you are allowed to stand beside me without scandal, without whispers, without the weight of history pressing its cold palm against my back. In that world, your hand finds mine not in secret, but in sunlight. But here I must learn to master silence as queens before me mastered war. They taught me how to walk gracefully through judgment, how to smile while my heart negotiates surrender, how to accept that some desires are too dangerous to confess aloud. And yet, you arrived, like a storm unannounced, like a question no tutor prepared me for, like a truth my soul recognized before my mind dared to follow. Do you remember the way our eyes first collided? It was not thunder that filled the room, but something more violent, recognition. As though we had met in another lifetime where crowns were not cages and love did not require permission. Baby, just let me play now. Let me dance in the fantasy, where you choose me freely and I choose you back without consequence. Because in reality, every heartbeat I give you is counted, measured, evaluated by those who believe my future belongs to the nation before it belongs to me. They speak of alliances, of legacy, of obligation as though love were a childish indulgence I must outgrow. But tell me, how does a heart outgrow the one rhythm that finally taught it how to feel alive? At night, when the chandeliers dim and even the guards grow bored of vigilance, I allow myself one dangerous ritual. I imagine your voice, calling my name without title. Not your highness, not madam, not princess, but simply me. The girl I was before protocol shaped my spine, before expectation disciplined my dreams. In your imagined voice I am not porcelain, I am not fragile, I am fire. Baby, just let me play now. Let me play with the idea that somewhere in this world, there exists a path where duty and desire do not stand on opposite sides of the battlefield. Because every day I walk a tightrope between what I must be and what I long to become. The newspapers praise my composure. The advisors admire my restraint. The public trusts my silence. Only the moon knows how often I whisper your name into the dark like a prayer I am afraid might be answered. Sometimes I wonder if you feel it too. This invisible thread pulling gently but relentlessly between us. Not enough to scandalize, not enough to expose, but enough to keep us both awake long after the world believes we have chosen rest. Baby, just let me play now. Let me confess the truth I bury beneath etiquette. I am tired of being the perfect future. I want to be your imperfect present, not in headlines, not in ceremonies, not in carefully edited photographs, but in the quiet, unfiltered moments where love is allowed to be messy, unguarded, real. Yet even as I write these words, inside the locked chambers of my heart, I feel the familiar fear rise. What if wanting you costs me everything I was born to protect? What if loving you means betraying a crown that generations before me bled to preserve? And still, what is a crown worth if worn by a heart that never dared to choose happiness? Baby, just let me play now. Just for this moment, just in this poem. Just in this secret place where my truth is not treason but tenderness. Let me imagine that you read these lines and understand the language hidden between them. The pauses, the hesitations, the trembling hope disguised as metaphor. Because even if the world never allows me to speak your name openly, it is already carved into the deepest chambers of who I am. And perhaps that is the most dangerous thing of all. Baby, just let me play now. The world already scripts my every gesture, every smile measured like currency spent carefully in rooms where power breathes louder than love. They call me disciplined. They call me composed. They call me destined. They do not call me lonely. Because loneliness wears silk in a palace. It eats from golden plates and sleeps beneath embroidered ceilings, yet it starves all the same. I sit in grand halls where conversations orbit politics, economies, protocol, and still, my mind drifts treasonously toward the curve of your laughter, the warmth of your presence, the way your silence never felt like obligation but understanding. You were never supposed to feel like refuge. You were never part of the plan, and perhaps that is exactly why my heart ran toward you without permission. Baby, just let me play now. Let me admit the fragile truth. I have memorized you the way others memorize prayers. The way your eyes soften when you pretend not to care. The way your voice changes when you say my name, as though it belongs somewhere deeper than etiquette allows. Sometimes I wonder if you know the power you hold, not political, not royal, not inherited, but the rare power to make a woman forget her crown simply by existing beside her. They warned me about distractions, about attachments. Nobody warned me about you. No one warned me how love could arrive so quietly and still undo everything. At banquets, I smile beside dignitaries whose hands have never trembled at the thought of mine. I laugh at conversations that feel scripted while my soul drifts toward memories I must pretend never happened. A glance held too long, a conversation interrupted too quickly, a goodbye that lasted far beyond its words. Baby, just let me play now. Let me pretend those moments meant something even if the world insists they must not. Because tell me, how does one forget the way a heart awakens after years of careful sleep? How does one return to obedient breathing once they have tasted what it means to feel alive? They speak to me of future responsibilities with pride as though they are gifts. They describe marriages like treaties, partnerships like contracts, love like an optional luxury I must learn to outgrow. But my heart, reckless, foolish, untrained in diplomacy, refuses to negotiate. It keeps returning to you like a tide that does not recognize borders. Baby, just let me play now, just for tonight. Just in these lines, let me imagine I am brave. Brave enough to reach for your hand in a crowded room. Brave enough to look at you without calculating who might be watching. Brave enough to choose my own heart over the expectations of an entire nation. But courage, I have learned, is complicated when every choice is magnified by history. I am not merely a woman in love. I am a symbol who must love carefully or not at all. And still, in the most treacherous hours between midnight and dawn, I catch myself dreaming of escape, not from my country, not from my duty, but from the version of myself that pretends she does not care. In those dreams, I find you waiting in ordinary places, a quiet street, a small cafe, a world where no one bows and no one demands. You call my name without ceremony, and I answer without fear. Do you know how dangerous those dreams are? Because once a heart has imagined freedom, it becomes nearly impossible to accept the cage. Baby, just let me play now. Let me confess the conflict I carry like a hidden blade. I want you with the sincerity of someone who has never been allowed to want anything freely. Not secretly, not cautiously, not halfway, but fully, openly, without apology. Yet every time my courage begins to rise, reality whispers with cruel precision. Love is expensive when your life belongs to the public. One wrong step, one misinterpreted moment, one photograph taken out of context, and suddenly my heart is no longer mine alone, but a headline, a debate, a scandal. So I remain composed. So I remain controlled. So I remain silent. But silence does not erase longing. It only teaches it to speak in quieter, more dangerous ways. Baby, just let me play now. Let me believe that somewhere between duty and desire, there exists a path no one has yet dared to imagine. A path where I can still serve my people without sacrificing the one truth that makes me human. Because if I must be a future queen, let me be a queen who knows what love feels like. Not from fairy tales, not from ceremonial dances, not from scripted romance designed for appearances, but from you, from the way you listened, from the way you stayed, from the way you saw me not as royalty but as a soul struggling to breathe. And maybe that is why this hurts so deeply, because you did not fall in love with the crown. You fell in love with the girl inside it, the girl who now writes your name in invisible ink across the margins of her destiny. Baby, just let me play now. Not as a girl hiding behind curtains of caution, not as a princess rehearsing restraint, but as a woman standing at the edge of her own becoming. Because something within me has begun to change, not loudly, not rebelliously, but quietly, like dawn unfolding behind the closed eyelids of a long, restless night. For so long I believed love must always be a secret I carry alone, a fragile treasure wrapped in silence, to protect the image the world demands of me. But hearts, they are not meant to live in locked rooms. They wither there. They lose their music, they forget their truth. And mine has been whispering your name too persistently to be ignored any longer. Baby, just let me play now. Let me play with honesty. Let me play with courage. Let me play with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, my destiny is not as narrow as tradition insists. Perhaps leadership does not mean emotional exile. Perhaps strength does not require self-denial. Perhaps a future queen can still be a woman who dares to love. They told me that the crown is heavy. They told me that power demands sacrifice. They told me that personal desire must always come second. What they never told me is how dangerous it is to rule others without first learning how to honor your own heart. Because what is wisdom without vulnerability? What is authority without humanity? What is legacy without truth? You have taught me, without intending to, that love does not weaken, it clarifies, it sharpens, it awakens. You have shown me a version of myself unafraid to feel deeply, unashamed to hope boldly, unwilling to settle for a life that only looks beautiful from the outside. And now I stand here, somewhere between who I was and who I am becoming, wondering if the greatest act of royalty is not obedience but authenticity. Baby, just let me play now. Let me imagine a future where I do not have to divide myself into public perfection and private longing. A future where love is not an inconvenience but a strength I carry openly, not recklessly, not selfishly, but with intention, with dignity, with the quiet confidence of someone who has finally chosen to live truthfully. Perhaps the world will never understand the battles I have fought silently, the nights I have spent negotiating with fate, the tears I have swallowed to preserve an image that never reflected my inner reality. But you would understand. You always did. You listened when others instructed. You saw when others expected performance. You stayed present when others only admired from a distance. And that is why my heart found its way to you even when logic begged it not to. Baby, just let me play now. Let me confess the final truth I can no longer hide. Loving you has changed me, not into someone weaker, but into someone braver, not into someone reckless, but into someone real, not into someone lost, but into someone who finally understands what she is willing to stand for. I do not know what the future will allow. I do not know what sacrifices still await me. I do not know whether love will be granted space in the architecture of my destiny. But I know this: I will no longer pretend that my heart is not part of the equation, because a crown without truth is merely decoration. A title without authenticity is hollow. A life without love is a performance that never reaches its soul. So if this poem is the only place I am fully honest, let it be enough for now. Let these words carry the weight of what my voice cannot yet say aloud. Let this confession exist in ink if not yet in action. And let you, wherever you are, whatever distance lies between us, know this quietly but surely. You were never a distraction. You were never a mistake. You were never a weakness. You were the awakening. Baby, just let me play now, not forever, not recklessly, not without responsibility, but just long enough to remember who I am when I am not afraid. Because somewhere beneath the crown, beneath the duty, beneath the expectations, there is still a woman who believes that love should not feel like treason. And perhaps, one day, she will be brave enough to live as though that belief were true.